You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have knowledge for life.
Greetings and welcome to Knowledge for Life. My name is Steve Muhammad, and we have a very powerful brother who is with us today that we're going to interview and ask various questions on topics that impact the Black community. And we are honored to have Dr. Umar Johnson, Pan-Africanist, activist, author, Black psychologist, revolutionary. And we're greetings, brother.
Thank you, my brother.
We're happy to have you here.
Honor's mine.
And you're here in Dayton for a subject that is really impacting the Black community. And in Jawanda Kunjufu's book, he said that if this was impacting any other community the way that it's impacting the Black community, there would be revolution in the street.
True.
Can you talk about why you're here in Dayton?
Yes, sir. I'm here for the Racial Justice Now conference that's being hosted, and I'm here to particularly talk about the psychoacademic Holocaust against Black boys, to give a war report on the status of that campaign against our young men. In my work as an expert school psychologist, which I've been doing for the past 15 years, also as a former school administrator, as well as a therapist and a political scientist, I have uncovered the fact that the American social order has designed a very malicious system of extermination and marginalization for Black males and Black boys in particular. There's 6 stages in the psychoacademic Holocaust against Black boys. Some people ask, why do I dare call it a Holocaust? Because that's exactly what it is. A Holocaust is a one-sided war against a defenseless population. And that's exactly what's happening to Black boys. There's a one-sided war being waged by the racist public-private charter and parochial school systems in this country that are sending more Black boys to jail and to the cemetery than they are to work and to college. The first stage is miseducation. Miseducation begins in preschool. Miseducation is the deliberate act of underpreparing Black boys to be competitive in the economic order after high school. So this starts in preschool and it runs roughly until the 3rd grade. So they deliberately make sure that our young men don't have minimum basic skills going into the 4th grade year. In the 4th grade, we see special education. This is the next strategy, where our boys are being sent to school psychologists, most of whom do not look like them, and they're being asked to diagnose these young men with disorders that they don't have, number 1, and cannot be proven to exist, number 2. What am I talking about? The learning disability and so-called ADHD, which is nothing more than ain't no daddy at home disorder, are invisible disorders that they diagnose Black boys with so they can get them out of the classroom, basically remove them from classes where teachers, normally white females, don't want to be bothered with them. Once they're put in special ed, they're now legally undereducated and miseducated.
Right.
And then the next stage is psychiatric medication. This is when they introduce Ritalin, Adderall, Strattera, Cycler, Risperdal, Metadate, Paxil, Prozac, the list goes on. There's dozens of these psychiatric medications that Black parents are being told are safe. Now, how can a drug be safe when if you look at the side effects listed on the website for the company, or if you look in any physician's desk reference guide on side effects for psychiatric meds, it clearly tells you that these drugs are not safe.
Absolutely.
They kill brain cells, they mess with growth, they can cause heart attack, stroke, epilepsy, diabetes, tic disorders, blood problems, and the list goes on. In fact, this morning, getting ready to come here, watching television in the hotel, the commercial came on talking about the drug Risperdal and how Risperdal, which is an antipsychotic that they give to Black boys to control anger, is causing them to grow breasts and lactate milk. So you have a drug that has Black boys growing breasts.
So can you say that even some of these drugs are even experimental? Because
they're all experimental.
They're all experimental.
And the reason I would say that they're all experimental is that none of them have really been on the market long enough for us to see the side effects. To really see side effects of psychiatric medication, you normally need at least a good 25 years because you have to give that child who is taking the drug time to mature into adulthood and then see if there were any latent side effects.
Right.
But of course, America is a capitalist society, and they're not concerned about people's welfare. They're only concerned about profit. So they're not going to wait 25 years for the side effects to manifest themselves. They want to sell the drug now.
And so you're looking at children whose bodies are still developing.
Yes.
And then you're giving them a drug on a still developing body.
Yes.
That's experimental.
That's experimental. It's the new Tuskegee experiment.
Right.
But the only difference between this experiment and the Tuskegee experiment is that the brothers who participated in the Tuskegee experiment were led to believe that they were actually receiving treatment that would benefit them. Now that's the same case here. Black parents are being led to believe that these drugs are actually going to benefit their child. However, because of my work and others' work, black parents now know that there's side effects. They now know that the drugs don't cure. They now know that the drugs are not even necessary. Why am I saying that? Because this hyperactive and inattentive behavior that these teachers are complaining about is nothing more than regular black male behavior.
Right.
This is what boys do, black or white. They're hyper. They have testosterone. The girl has estrogen.
Right.
Boys are socialized to be energetic and active. Girls are socialized to sit still. You see, but when schools are dominated by females, then they look for a female prototype of a student. And if you don't fit into the prototype of the female student, they automatically pathologize and criminalize your behavior, which under normal circumstances would be considered normal.
Now you're talking about also with that hyperactivity, the children being overdosed on sugar.
Yes.
High fructose corn syrup that they get through the lunch counters and things like that. So now that's being exacerbated. The problem is being exacerbated.
Without question, because the child is already addicted to one drug. Sugar, caffeine, high fructose corn syrup. And sugar was considered a drug in American history, okay, until the sugar companies lobbied Congress to take it off the list of addictive substances. Sugar is a drug, and that's been validated. That's why it looks like crack, weighs like crack, and has the same side effects as crack. So you take a child who's already addicted on one drug, and now you introduce another. So on top of the sugar, you got Concerta. On top of the caffeine, you got Metadate. On top of the high fructose corn syrup, you have another drug. So now a child is taking 2 stimulant medications. That's what you call drug abuse.
Yes, yes. Now, one of the things, and I think I kind of interrupted you going down.
That's all right.
But you talked about the 3rd grade, and from what I'm hearing is that they're building prison beds for, is it the 3rd grade?
Yes. Up until recent years, and even still now, depending on what state you're looking at, most of them looked at the reading level of black boys at the conclusion of the 3rd grade to project criminal activity in the next 10 years to determine how many new prison beds or prisons they would actually need to build to accommodate the miseducated black male population. Now, the war has intensified so much that if I'm running a state department of incarceration or corrections, I don't even have to look at the reading level of black boys in the 3rd grade anymore. And I'm going to tell you why, for 2 big reasons. Number one, we have mandatory graduation exams.
Right.
So now we have a test that a child has to pass in order to get a diploma. You didn't have mandatory graduation exams 20 years ago.
Right.
You have them now. So on top of meeting the exit criteria of a school district, you now have to pass a test. Well, if I'm getting A's in my class,
right,
which should be indicative of the fact that I'm mastering the material, why do you have to give me a test on top of the fact I've already been tested all year long?
Right.
It's because the test is being deliberately designed to make sure the black boy does not pass it, so he does not get a regular diploma, which is going to intensify the likelihood of him adopting a life of crime in order to take care of himself and his family, because the graduation test is going to keep you from making something out of your life. So I don't have to look at the reading level no more, because we now have a test that's going to prevent you from getting a diploma. The other thing we have that we just got on New Year's Day is a new GED test. So for black boys who dropped out of school, black boys who were kicked out of school, because it's really no dropout, it's only push out by the way they get treated. For many of our young men, because in America, only 1 out of every 4 black boys gets a high school diploma through the traditional route, high school. That means 3 out of every 4 black boys are going to be looking for the GED. Most of our boys get their high school credential via GED, not diploma.
Right.
But now you have a new GED test, which is harder than the old one, which is just as difficult to pass as the high school graduation test. So let's say I live in Ohio. I got to pass a test to get a high school diploma. I'm not going to pass it. I'm just going to drop out, settle for the GED, because I know I'm not going to pass that graduation test because I ain't been taught. So let me settle for the GED. Well, they anticipated that. This is what white supremacy does. They sit back and make sure they seal up every hole to make sure they catch everybody.
Right.
So when you drop out of high school to take the GED test, you're now going to find that the GED test is just as hard as the high school graduation test. So now there's no second option.
Right.
There's no second way out. So again, I say, if I'm running State Department of Incarcerations in Ohio, I no longer care about the reading level of black boys in the 3rd grade, because we have a test now that I know these black boys can't pass. Why do I know it? Because we control the education. And because we know we're not properly educating them, we can predict with accurate certainty that they're not going to pass because we control the learning.
Right.
If we didn't control the learning, we would have to hope they fail. But when you control the learning, you automatically know what the end result is going to be.
Right.
And if they drop out and settle for the GED, well, guess what? We just made that just as hard as the graduation test. All roads lead to prison.
Wow. I mean, this whole school system, Brother Umar, is amazing, because one of the things that the minister spoke on was, he coined a phrase that he who controls the diameter of your knowledge controls the circumference of your activity.
Yes, indeed.
So now we're not only dealing with what you just spoke on, but can you speak now on the curriculum period? Because now it seems that we're hearing that our young people aren't even taught that we were brought here as slaves. They're not even given a true history.
No,
therefore, they're not given a foundation to
in fact, if I remember correctly, I believe it's the state of Texas, but there's probably others. But in the state of Texas, they're now considering legislation. I believe it's Texas, but it's definitely a southern state, to remove the teaching of slavery out of the history books altogether. Okay, to erase the memory of victimization. Why is this important? Because in the Obama era, America is trying to recast itself as a post-racial society. Not because they care about what black people think about white folks. That's irrelevant. But they have to do this in order to make it look like there's no longer a war against black people. So this is what you call confusing the victim. I'm going to make it look like not only am I not your enemy, I've never been your enemy. So if I can create an atmosphere that says I'm not guilty at all for the condition of black people, and then convince black children that I am not their oppressor, if they no longer see me as a risk to their livelihood, they won't pay me any attention. And as they're not paying me any attention, I will set in motion more strategies that's going to effectively eliminate them as a group. We've seen it under Obama. Under Obama, we've had more prisons built. Under Obama, we have more schools closed down than we've seen under George W. Bush. So under Obama, black people are doing worse because you have a president who's scared to speak up on behalf of the issues affecting black people. He's a political coward. And because he's a political coward, white people know they can do whatever they want to do to black people because he's not going to say a word. And how do they know he's not going to say a word? Because he wouldn't be in office if it wasn't for us. President Obama did not become president because the populace voted him in. President Obama is president because power put him there. Power keeps him there. And power can take him out of there.
Exactly. I know that we have a little bit of time before they bring you on. I wanted to talk on. Oh, she's ready now. Okay, yes, sir. Maybe later we can.
Yes, we can finish.
Okay, we'll just keep this here. Thank you, brother.
No problem.
We'll put it on. And we are here on the second part of the interview with Dr. Umar Johnson, and we want to thank him for doing this second part, because actually this is hours later after the first part. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And so we were talking about the, I forget really where we ended off, but we were basically talking about the third grade testing scores, and how that is leading to the mass incarceration of our children. You had touched on something you just spoke about too, about the mass incarceration. But one of the things that I really wanted to touch on, which seems to be the theme of yours and Dr. Boyce Watkins, who spoke, is that we are at war.
Yes.
And can you give us a real thick understanding of that? Because I don't think a lot of people are grasping. I mean, because maybe bullets are not being fired at us from white society, but can you give us a...
Sure. In a classic book written by Sun Tzu, The Art of War, he said basically the best way to wage war is without armed struggle. A sophisticated military campaign would not require the loss of life, but it would require the taking over of the lives of the victims. And that's exactly what's happening to African people in this country. We are not necessarily being murdered, but our lives are being murdered. So we're not given the opportunity to give fullest expression to our talents, our goals, and our ambitions. And when a group of people or any individual is no longer allowed to dream, they're already dead, because it is our dreams that keep us alive. And when you're not allowed to have them, death has already set in, even if it's not a physical death.
And I think you've said it on a lecture before, and it was a profound point, and I don't think a lot of people actually know this, and I believe you said it, and that is that the birth rate, that more male boys are born, but at a certain point there are more females in society. Can you...
Without question, much of the research out there is showing that there isn't a disproportionate birth rate as it relates to black boys and black girls in America. When you look at the numbers of infants born, it's almost a perfect gender balance between male and female at birth. However, because of the war against black boys and against black men that sends so many of them to the prison and so many of them to a premature death, by the time we get to our late teenage years, there's this disproportionate amount of black women and an under a representative amount of black males, which unfortunately leaves a lot of black women wondering if they'll ever be able to get married, and that automatically destabilizes the black family, because when you don't have men to be able to marry women, then that destabilizes and disrupts the flow of the culture.
Hidden Colors coming out, you're in it. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then a little bit about some of the, we'll get into the end of it with some of the projects you're working on.
Yes, Hidden Colors is coming out at the end of June. There's a lot of new people who are going to be in it. And I think it's going to be just as powerful, if not more so, than part one and part two. And obviously the benefit of Hidden Colors is that it was able to give our people a very effective historical and cultural knowledge of self without a lot of the technological and lingo that we tend to get from higher educated scholars. The information isn't new, but the delivery was. And the benefit and the beauty, the genius of Hidden Colors was the way in which image and sound was combined with information to really impress upon black people that we are something other than what we've been led to believe we are.
And the commemoration of Black Wall Street, you spoke on that. It recently just took place. Can you say a little bit about that? Because I know that Brother Ashad from the Final Call newspaper would love to have your comment on that as well.
Sure. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma last week. I was invited down there by some very good brothers and sisters. I had an opportunity to tour Black Wall Street, had an opportunity to learn a lot about the history that I did not know before. And probably one of the most important things that I learned is that the struggle is not over. The city of Tulsa, the state of Oklahoma, still has not paid reparations to the descendants of the victims of the Tulsa, Oklahoma Black Wall Street massacre of 1921 that our brothers and sisters sued for reparations, but they were told that the statute of limitations had ran out because of the usage of language. Instead of referring to it as a hate crime or as a massacre, it was referred to as a riot. And so that terminology of it being a riot, which gives the false impression that blacks and whites were equally responsible and culpable in what happened, it stole the power and thunder away from the legal fight for reparations. So one of the things I learned from that, and I already knew it, but it reconfirmed, and that is we have to be careful about the language that we use. But just by calling it a riot instead of a massacre, that actually gave the white folks, it gave them an opportunity to escape responsibility for
right.
what happened.
Legally dodge.
Yes, and the city of Tulsa doesn't like to talk about Black Wall Street, and that's because if you dig deep enough, there's a lot of people still living who were either involved or who are the descendants of those who were directly involved. So when you talk about reparations and restitution, the potential for lawsuits, things get really quiet. So the brothers and sisters are still down there fighting. The late Johnny Cochran, one of our greatest attorneys, he was going to help put forth the fight for Tulsa's Black Wall Street, and he was willing to take that fight as far as it needed to go. But as you know, he was assassinated, I would say. And part of that had to do with the fact that if he was successful in Tulsa, that would have triggered lawsuits due to other racial massacres in American history, Rosewood, Charleston, Wilmington. So had Johnny Cochran been successful with our brothers and sisters in earning reparations for the Tulsa massacre of 1921, that would have opened the door for brothers and sisters to get reparations for other massacres that were carried out against our people, and would have ultimately led to the chief massacre, which is the Ma'afa and the enslavement of African people. So Johnny Cochran had to go because what he was doing was far too dangerous for the American government to handle. And in killing him, they killed that struggle temporarily. But the brothers and sisters in Tulsa are still pushing along. And one day they believe, and I believe, that we're going to get those reparations of Tulsa and then use that as a test case to get reparations for Africans in America.
Brother Coates seems like he's pushing reparations, has got at least back out there in the public. And so I think that, along with people knowing this now about Black Wall Street, that maybe this will open some more doors and get this movement going. Now, before we run out of time, I want you to just for the rest of this moment, tell us about your project, the school that you're needing our people to help to make it happen.
Well, it's my plan to acquire the St. Paul's College, which is a historically black college that was opened in 1888 by Father James Solomon Russell, a good friend of Booker T. Washington. A very successful black school. A lot of people attended it. It closed down last year, June of 2013, and graduated the last class. And I learned about the school while visiting Virginia, and I've been in contact with the president of the college. He understands that it is my intention to purchase that school, to use it, to rechristen it as the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy for African Boys, a residential school specifically designed for the needs of our children, because public, private, parochial, and charter school cannot, will not, and have not properly educated black boys. So we have a campaign going on right now, a fundraiser, to raise $5 million by August the 21st to purchase that school. And so I'm asking brothers and sisters from all over the world to please visit drumarjohnsonschool.com, drumarjohnsonschool, drumarjohnsonschool.com, to make your PayPal donation. We have until the end of August. We need to raise $5 million to give our boys the education that they desire. And we want it to be a residential school, because so many of our boys don't have fathers. And so we want to be able to surround them with the male father figures that they need at that school. So we're going to make it a heaven on earth. We're going to teach political science, agricultural science, financial science, spiritual science, dietary science, science of family and community. It's going to be nothing like we've ever seen before. We want to have aviation program to teach our boys how to fly. We want to have a maritime academy to teach them how to float ships. We want to have academies in the areas of making clothing. We're going to have a state-of-the-art music studio for brothers and sisters who are interested in the musical arts. We want to make sure they have access to the best equipment available to maximize their God-given talent. So it's going to be like nothing we've ever seen. We're also asking for brothers and sisters who are interested in being considered for employment at the school to send me their resume at this time. The resumes can be sent to fdmgresumes@gmail.com. fdmgresumes@gmail.com. I'm also working on a documentary of my own, the Shockumentary, the Psychoacademic War Against Black Boys, where we're going to show how miseducation, special education, psychiatric medication, juvenile incarceration, psychological frustration, and premature extermination is being used as a weapon of mass destruction against black boys. So any parents that have testimonials that they would like to give a story about a black boy you've seen personally, that you've witnessed, and you feel that it is worthy for the inclusion in the documentary, then they can simply text me their name and their city and the word Shockumentary to my number, which is 215-989-9858. Again, that's 215-989-9858. 9858. Obviously, I have my new book, Psychoacademic Holocaust, The Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys, which can be obtained on my website, drumarjohnson.com. So basically, I'm just traveling the country trying to raise awareness about the war against black boys, particularly through the mediums of special ed and ADHD, and doing what I can to help parents fight to protect their sons from unnecessary special ed and very unnecessary psychiatric medication.
And I just read an article, brother, that backed up basically what you said, and that is that ADHD, there is no medical way of actually defining it. Mm-hmm. That it's
yes,
just,
you can't objectively
this
determine.
Is what the article said. This is amazing, and we're all made to believe that this is a medical fact.
Condition. No, it's an opinion. Most psychological diagnoses are opinions. That doesn't mean that the mental illness doesn't exist.
Right.
It just means you can't prove whether or not someone has it. You see. So when you say autism is real, but autism can also be misdiagnosed. Mental retardation is real, but it can also be misdiagnosed. Some children do have neurologically based learning disabilities, but it is hard to objectively prove this. So when you deal with psychological diagnosis, you're basically dealing with somebody's professional opinion, their disposition on whether or not a condition exists. Mental illnesses cannot be proven in most cases. Schizophrenia and things like that can be, but the problems that are being used against black boys, the weapons, the diagnoses, ADHD, learning disability, emotional disturbance, and mild mental retardation, they can't be proven. They're just opinions.
Thank you. Well, we got 5 more minutes. Well, with 5 more minutes left, I don't want to skip the feminization of black boys. I mean, we got the feminization, a lot may not know, through the chemicals, through the bisphenol A's and the plastics and the female hormones in the water, but there are other ways that they're being feminized.
Yes, in fact, the primary way is through socialization. Right now, sexual confusion is being used as a tool of population control. By increasing the number of sexually confused Africans, you reduce the number of children being born, because 2 men can't make a baby, neither can 2 women. And so although we hear a whole bunch of hype around family rights and homosexual rights and all of this, it's important for black people to understand, whether they support it or not is irrelevant, that this is being pushed by population control organizations and the highest level of government as a population control weapon. See, homicide is population control. Birth control pill, okay, that is birth control. Homosexuality is conception control. You prevent the egg from eating the semen.
Right.
You see. And if you can prevent conception, you don't have to worry about abortion. And if you can prevent conception, you don't have to worry about homicide. So preventing sex between men and women in the black community is a very effective way of curtailing the black population. What they want to do is get us to a point of 0 population growth. That's when more black people die than are born every year. Once your death rate exceeds your birth rate, your extinction can be predicted. But first you have to get the death rate higher than the birth rate. Okay.
And that's what they're working on.
Exactly. And by using homosexuality as a weapon, you're reducing the birth rate, which helps you to get to 0 population growth.
And just recently, I think on Time Magazine, they had this transgender, and they promoted it as the first transgender on Time Magazine. Of course, as you're saying, it was a black man. You know, of course,
dressed as a woman.
Yes, sir. Well, Brother Umar, I want to thank you for once again, these few moments, and I know it's been a long day.
That's all right.
But I want to just encourage, everyone who's watching this video. We're going to go ahead and put the link on the YouTube video where they can go to your website and donate. And we encourage everyone, if they only donate even just $1. Those who are watching 5,000, that's $5,000. If you have $2, $5, whatever you can give. This is something that we know we have to give to. Every dollar we give is a bullet that's fired at the enemy. And so we want to thank you, Brother Umar, for your time. And we're going to pray, and we're going to also put our dollar where our mouth is. So thank you, brother.
Appreciate that.
Well, to you and your family, we want to thank you for watching, and may God bless you and your family with the light of truth and understanding. God bless.